Traders, how are you? Marcello, founder of the Day Trading Academy, co-founder of Speed Up Trader. Today we are going to be doing the recap of what happened in the markets last week. Overall, amazing week, a lot of news, especially with all the continued earnings, the news with TikTok. So definitely have a lot of great information for you. Don't forget, I got this fancy new microphone here for you guys. If you want to listen on the podcast, it's pretty legit, the sound that comes out of this thing. All you have to do is look for Day Trading Academy on Spotify or iTunes, wherever you guys want to get your podcast. And if you can't find it, let me know, and I'll be sure to add that on there. Also, don't forget to like the video here on YouTube. Smash that like button. It's great for the YouTube algorithm. I do these free for you guys so you can understand, especially those of you guys that are new in the markets, getting interested and being able to learn how to trade and do all that. And also, if you have any questions, I'm going to start pulling the questions again since I have a little bit of time. Go ahead and put a hashtag Ask Marcello, and I'll be happy to go ahead and answer all your questions for you. Overall, for the week, Monday, the markets were higher. The Nasdaq surged to a record high on a rebound of multi-billion-dollar deals. This includes Microsoft's potential purchase of TikTok. Now that President Trump signed the executive order saying that in 45 days, no more TikTok in the U.S. I'm really sad to hear that all of these teenagers and teeny boppers are not going to be able to dance anymore to music. It just breaks my heart. Jokes. Tuesday, the market was higher again. We had another record close for the Nasdaq, lifted a lot by the energy stocks as well. The markets, Wednesday, we had another market that was higher. The Nasdaq again closed a sixth record time as investors embraced for corporate earnings and the service sector data as well. Thursday, markets were higher. Nasdaq's seventh day with a record high, above 11,000 for the first time ever. And investors braced for more corporate earnings with a lot of surprises to the upside. Friday, the market was mixed. We had a data in regards to a sharp slowdown in the U.S. Unemployment rate and employment growth as well. If you guys don't know or haven't seen in the news, the unemployment rate is now at 10.2%, and investors worried are about the lawmakers in regards to another stimulus. Even though it's a short-term gain, in my opinion, it's a long-term. Literally, we're just, we're taking the knife and we're just putting it right in the heart of the U.S. because long-term, it's not going to be good. If you guys want me to talk about that, I will. China and the U.S. tensions also escalate more than anything due to the situation with the banning of TikTok. And overall, the U.S. markets were higher. The Dow was up 3.8%. Down 3.87% for the year. Then we had S&P 500 was up 2.45% for the week, and the Nasdaq was was up for the year. It's up huge, almost 23%, but for the week it only went up 2.47%. In overseas market news, the European markets were mostly higher, and one of the things, just a little tidbit I wanted to share with you guys as well. The European Union economy as of 2019 as a whole is the second largest in the world. We have the U.S. at number 1, Europe at number 2, then China at number 3, then Japan and Germany, and then everybody else underneath. And California, for example, with a lot of these high-tech companies are based, for example, is the 5th largest economy on its own. It's unfathomable, the U.S. economic prowess. That's why we're still the empire for now anyway. European markets are mostly higher. The DAX, the Germany, largest economy in Europe, went up 2.93%. One of the only markets to go down in Europe was Istanbul, went down by 6.25%. And in Latin America, markets mostly higher as well, with the Merval in Argentina going up 6.23%. Africa and the Middle East, we mostly higher markets as well. The South African market went up by 6.23%. And in the Far East, in Asia and Australia, one of the only market negatives was the Philippines at 1.41% negative. The KOSPI in South Korea was 4.54% positive, the biggest winner there. In Bitcoin and other cryptocurrency news, On Monday, Bitcoin, a lot of the enthusiasts that were talking about how Bitcoin should be going up because of the halving has been, if I'm not mistaken, I think it's the 11th week or 12th week after the halving, finally getting a rise. We went above 12,000, but then it fell 13% to 10,600 after there was a liquidation of $1 billion in Bitcoin. Just goes to show you the volatility that we have in Bitcoin. It can't play a role of a currency because of the volatility. It is still another asset, though, right? This is what I've explained to you as well. In my opinion, I know the Bitcoin and crypto guys they're religious about it, right? So obviously they'll get into the comments and no, it's the best thing. It's a slice, blah, 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 blah. But if you guys don't know, that there's two parts of these cryptocurrencies that a lot of people don't talk about, okay? You have the blockchain technology, which is the technology that the cryptos use, and then you have the actual digital currencies themselves, like Bitcoin and Ethereum and Ripple. Some are a little bit different than others, but essentially that's the case. And when somebody says crypto is the future of the world, they lump these two things together. And in my opinion, blockchain is that's going to revolutionize the world. They're already using blockchain technology in real estate transactions and other things, and I wouldn't be surprised, for example, if we had a government coin around the corner that actually was based off the blockchain technology. So I think Bitcoin will still exist. It'll still be around. It'll go up and go down, but new financial system based on Bitcoin, I don't think so. So we'll see who's right in the end there. Other than that, Bitcoin is higher for the week, up 2.58%. It went to 11,649.40 cents. Fitch ratings in financial and banking news are cutting the financial outlook on the U.S.'s AAA credit rating from stable to negative. They're saying that the fiscal policy depends in part on the November election in addition to what the makeup of the Congress is going to be. It warns that the GDP to debt ratio can reach 130% by next year, 2021, as the national debt has already surpassed $25 trillion. Now, I always try to do these videos without a political bias, right? I think most of us are absolutely tired of all the political fighting. So it doesn't matter if you're right or left, or you're capitalist or socialist, or if you love Obama, hate Obama, love Trump, hate Trump, but the debt is a serious issue, okay? So it doesn't matter who's in office. You can see that both parties have been privy to literally, just like I said in the beginning, just put the knife right into our heart. Anytime that a country has gone to 100% GDP to debt ratio, meaning that the total amount of debt in the economy, or in the country, I should say, is equal to the size of their economy, that spells trouble. Now, the U.S. could probably go a little bit higher due to the fact that we're the empire, right? Everybody uses dollars, but it's not going to last much longer. And this is why I've been talking a lot about, the last few years about silver. If you guys haven't watched the video on YouTube that I uploaded about the $42,000 loss that I had, that did not end up in a loss because I was anticipating the market to get a huge run, which was great, which has already happened. I'll get into that in just a moment. But this is a serious problem that's not going to go away because they're talking about another stimulus now, right? Another package. Now we're just throwing around $1 trillion packages like we're going out and buying a piece of gum. It's going to be a big problem. Investors are worrying about the U.S. government response to the pandemic, that it's going to be taking the U.S. dollar down as it had the worst performance in a decade in July. The recent financial and monetary stimulus is starting to accelerate as well the slow erosion that we've had in the U.S. as the world's dominant currency. If you guys don't know, according to the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, about 62% of all reserves in the world are in U.S. dollars. After that, we have 20% for the euro and then about 1.9% for the yuan in China. And foreign holdings of U.S. treasuries are considered, in other words, government debt, right? The U.S. government bonds, where the government borrows money. They borrow our money and then pay an interest. If you guys don't know what that means, it's considered one of the safest investments in the world. It rose to $6.86 trillion in May. I think most people are going to realize over time, and it's just going to bite them in the butt from one day to the next, that they're going to see that really isn't the best investment, or the most secure investment, I should say. That's why you guys can see, I always tell you guys to pay attention to what they do, not what they say, because it doesn't matter what side you're on. The news isn't going to report the actual facts. They're going to report what they want you to think. That's why we see all this censorship across the board, right? One good piece of news is U.S. household did cut their debt for the first time in 6 years in Q2, led by a drop in credit card balances. Consumers cut back on non-essential spending during the pandemic. There was a $34 billion drop in overall household debt to about $14.27 trillion in Q2. Now think about this for a moment, okay? We have $25 trillion federal debt, the entity that is the United States. We have $14.27 trillion in personal credit card debt. And then that doesn't include the unfunded liabilities like Social Security and Medicare and state debt and city debt. It's a ticking time bomb. And I think, we've had a lot of these people over the years talk about the end times of the U.S. empire. And the reason why we haven't faced that reckoning moment, let's say, is due to the fact that we've had these government bailouts and the government continues to kind of, piece up the foundation. We're just kind of walking along with crutches, so to speak. But I think we're getting to that point now, and I can do a video about this to talk to you guys about it. I would say anywhere around 2026 with a 2 to 3 year leverage in between. So I would say around 2026. It could come as early as 2022, 23, or as later, depending on what they do, of 2028, 29. But we're definitely literally knocking right on the door. So I hope you're preparing yourself. Don't say I didn't warn you when it happens. And if we have, for example, as well, this is something I've mentioned a lot on the Spanish side, because I do these videos in Spanish as well. Hablar español? Fala português, gente? We have a situation where there's going to be, I think, some kind of natural disaster on the West Coast. And if we do have some kind of earthquake or something, one thing is I don't think we're done this year. I think we're going to have one more thing that hits us this year. And within 2 or 3 years, I think we're going to have some kind of accident in the Pacific coast. If we do have the big one, right? Because California is known to be earthquake prone. If we have some kind of earthquake that damages a lot of the crops and everything that we have in those beautiful valleys out there in California, most people don't know that the majority of our food supply comes from California. If that happens, whether it's the damaging of infrastructure or anything along those lines, damaging of the crops, the U.S. is no longer an empire. It'll still act like an empire, but we're not going to be able to hold our own anymore because of that. Just FYI, remember I told you that. U.S. crude for the week in commodities went up 2.35%. Still down 32.04% for the year. It ended at $41.22. International Brent went up 2.54% for the week at $44.40. It's still down 32.32% for the year. Gold hit 2 record highs. On Wednesday, it hit $2,041 an ounce. Thursday, it hit $2,069.60 an ounce. After pulling back a little bit, it finished at $2,035 an ounce. It went up 2.93% for the week. And the main issue is the USD. Remember, I just mentioned to you guys that had its worst month in years in July, and that has made it cheaper for foreign investors to buy gold as well. Remember that most commodities in the world, we're talking about physical products, everything from wheat to rice to coffee, is mostly, I would say, over 90% of that is in US dollars. The only exceptions are gold, some precious metals, oil as well. They've opened up markets in places like Singapore. So keep that in mind. Investors are fearing trillions in unprecedented stimulus from central banks are going to result in inflationary pressures, which means that we're going to have inflation. One thing I want you to if you guys don't know, the monetary system, the finance that we use in our society is called fiat money. If you guys don't know what that means, is basically, I can't find a piece of paper here around me, but the reason why that green piece of paper has value called the dollar is because you and I have confidence in it, and the world has confidence in it. If they do lose money, not lose money, excuse me, if they lose confidence in that piece of paper, then it's over. And we can really see what's happening in a place like the Bolivar in Venezuela, where it's literally the inflation is at 10,000%. The value of that currency, because people don't value it anymore, has deteriorated. Same thing, for example, in Argentina. Argentina, literally about a year and a half ago, don't quote me on this, you guys can look it up, but Argentina used to have the peso in Argentina was about 16, 17 to 1. So you get 16 pesos, 17 pesos to $1. Now it's at 70 and rising, and they instituted currency controls. So keep that in mind, because I think that's we're approaching that point as well in the United States, where people, as soon as people don't have confidence in the US dollar, our way of life is over, because we're the reserve currency of the world. And then we're just going to be another country, and then we're not going to be able to spend all this amount of money on all this stuff that we're accustomed to, and our value of life, or way of life, I should say, is going to change. Other than that, the silver has done very well as well. You guys, I mentioned that video that I saw about that $42,000 loss. Try to be 100% transparent with the videos and the results. Obviously, you guys know everybody can make money trading, right? But you can lose it too. So I want to show those losses. And now we've had a huge, beautiful run all the way to $29.50. If you guys follow me on Instagram, I talked about how I was thinking about getting to around 30 or so. We had a retracement on Friday, which I mentioned on Instagram as well, because you can never have an asset that goes up so quickly without any kind of correction. So we're getting that correction now, but it is not going to get anywhere below 20 anymore. Other than that, silver went up 15.62% to $28.42. In political news on Thursday, Malaysian anti-graft officials arrested the former finance minister, and sorry for my Chinese viewers if I say this wrong, Lim Guan Eng, and the people in Malaysia as well. There's both Chinese and Malays there, so sorry if I didn't pronounce that correctly. Connected to corruption allegations of a $1.5 billion undersea tunnel project. In economic news, the Eurozone manufacturing activity expanded last month, the first growth since early 2019. And the Asia's disruption is easing as contraction slowed in export-reliant nations. So the zone economy, the Eurozone economy, contracted about 12.1% in quarter two. They're anticipating an 8.1% growth in quarter three. I never talk a lot about what they quote unquote expect to happen, because before the 2009 crisis, for example, the head of the central bank at that moment, Ben Bernanke, said, no, everything's fine. There's no way there could be a collapse. So again, I always tell you guys, don't pay attention to what they say, because they're always going to lie to us. Pay attention to what they do, the way that they act. I mean, if you guys see, for example, all the central banks that are buying the gold, that's one of the reasons that's happening. Germany, that's another story as well. So orders of German-made goods rose sharply in June as well at 27.9%, more than doubled May's 10.4% expansion. These numbers, I try to always explain to you what they mean. Essentially, it's the latest sign that Europe's largest economy is leaving behind effects of the pandemic. There's been a jump in 14.9% in exports as well, but the volumes are still below the pre-pandemic levels. They're below about 11.3% February's level, which was the last pre-crisis month. So we haven't recovered. There's good news, right? Especially in Europe, that they're getting out of this economic conundrum, let's say, but we're still not back where we were before, essentially. The Philippine economy is falling more than expected in quarter two as well, falling into a recession for the first time in 29 years. If you guys don't remember, Australia also holds the record for having 29 years without an economic contraction or a recession. The economic activity was one of the world's longest and strictest from the coronavirus lockdowns. The economy fell by 16.5% in quarter two from the same year. It's the biggest slump in the government's quarterly GDP data since going back to 1981. Initial jobless claims in the U.S. fell for the first time since early August. For the first time in 3 weeks. They touched the lowest level since the coronavirus began 4 months ago. Surprising decline that suggests improvement in the labor market. So that's a good thing for the recovering economy as well. The U.S. gained as well 1.8 million jobs. There was only 1.6 million expected in July, as a lot of the states are starting to open, even though slowly. Some have re-locked down, but as we went from zero, now we have a lot of things that are open. That's great for the economy. The unemployment rate went down to 10.2%. It was forecasted at 10.5% in July, 11.1% in June. And as the fiscal stimulus fades, we still have 10.6 million Americans who lost their jobs due to the pandemic and are still out of work. That's one of the reasons why you should learn, for example, how to trade. Because if we have the situation again, or they shut down the economy again, you won't have to worry about keeping your gym open or your restaurant open. You literally will be able to sit at your home in your underwear, being able to work just fine. In corporate news, Apple became officially the world's most valuable firm. Before, it was Saudi Arabia's Aramco, which is the state-owned oil company. If you remember, they sold part of it, a very small part. But now Apple has gone up and achieved that number one ranking. They're ranked at 1.92 trillion in valuation, where Aramco, which is, again, the state-owned oil company from Saudi Arabia, was at 1.76 trillion. And Apple shares are up about 51% in 2020. Disney stock is up 28% in the last few months, but it's still down 10% in 2020. They took a $5 billion with a B dollar hit in the last quarter, and they're getting a lot more aggressive about streaming, especially overseas, to be able to, they received an upgrade, to be able to obviously, look for revenue from somewhere, and they received an upgrade from Guggenheim. I'll tell you guys a story about when I was watching the World Cup real quick. This is a complete side tangent, but it's funny. When I was watching the World Cup, I always watch it in Spanish, because the guys in the World Cup, the Spanish commentators are, and I remember the last World Cup, I think it was the previous, not the last one, the one before, and I always would listen. So anytime I see these German names, I always laugh. Because on the Spanish side, I remember Juan Steiger, which was the name of the guy. The guy was always like, Juan Steiger, Juan Steiger. Anyway, side tangent, thought it was funny. Shares of South Korean Hyundai Motors soared 7.8%. Juan Steiger, 7.8% to their highest level in May in 2018. There's been upbeat July sales in hopes of higher electric vehicle sales. In trade news, the U.S. trade deficit did narrow 7.5% to just under $51 billion in June. Exports rebounded to a record 9.4%, just a little bit over $158 billion. And goods exported surged to a historic 14.5%. You shouldn't pay attention to all of these numbers. Obviously, the government is going to make it always try to sound good, right? But I wouldn't pay so much attention to these record numbers, because remember, we shut everything down, and after we reopen, obviously there's going to be a huge boom from the previous month. So don't believe this. Oh, we have great, phenomenal numbers, because it's really just a recovery from when we shut everything down. Just keep that in mind. On Thursday, Trump moved to reimpose 10% tariffs on Canadian aluminum of about $2.7 billion worth of goods. Canada, in response on Friday, did the same thing and placed that on aluminum from the U.S. products. And in technology, there's a really interesting piece of technology that was developed in Singapore as researchers have developed an electronic skin that you're going to be able to create the sense of touch. So it's going to be amazing for people, for example, that have lost limbs, or, we're getting to this world now where we're going to be half robots, half human flesh. It's going to allow people with prosthetic limbs to be able to detect objects, feel texture, and even temperature and pain. It's known, and I might butcher this, as asynchronous coated electronic skin, made up 100 small sensors in 1 square centimeter, or about 0.16 square inches in size. Samsung unveiled their new Galaxy Note smartphone with a new version foldable phone called the Z Fold 2. Hopes to regain ground against rivals Huawei and Apple now that the smartphone market is starting to recover from the pandemic slump. And there's also been a new composite material that is going to allow to create miniature circuits to be placed on semiconductor chips. The industry-wide electron leakage problem solved with an insulator. A simple way that I can explain this to you is think of it electricity. When you have to transport it from A to B, point A to B, you lose electricity. So now this is a new way that they're developing these chips to allow the electron leakage problem, which is, it's a very over macro view of what's going on. But it's going to revolutionize the industry once again. And it's known as amorphous boron nitride, now being developed in South Korea and the UK. And in investment news, Japanese owner of 7-Eleven is buying the Speedway chain of gas stations Marathon Petroleum for $21 billion. It's one of the biggest acquisitions globally after the arrival of the pandemic. By acquiring Speedway, the Japanese retailer is adding 4,000 stores to its operations in North America to give it a boost. And 7-Eleven used to be American. It's Japanese now, at least majority owned by Japanese conglomerate. It's going to give it presence of 47 of the top 50 most populated areas in the U.S. And one of the things about the taxes that Trump places, there's one of the things that I believe is that he's not doing it to, close off the U.S. economy. I think he's using it as a bargaining chip. And I've mentioned to you this before, where an American citizen can't go to Japan and I was going to say a Japanese country, but anyway, a U.S. citizen cannot go to Japan and just buy any company he wants, like the Japanese can come here to do in the United States, right? So it's a tit for tat. Same thing with Canada. Canada used to have import taxes of over 200% on U.S. dairy, right? And you guys can see we have the new USMCA deal, which replaced NAFTA. So this is, in my opinion, more of a negotiating tactic to make sure that it's a level playing field, which I do agree. At the end of the day, taxes aren't good for anybody, including import taxes and tariffs. But if it levels the playing field, then I think it's better for everybody as well. It may not be good for their country because now we can compete with there. And you guys know the United States is very competitive when it comes to products and services. A potential forced sale to Microsoft of TikTok's U.S. operations provoked a huge backlash, especially from Chinese social media. Obviously, you guys know that Trump signed the executive order. So in 45 days, you can't be using TikTok. Again, I'm heartbroken that teenagers are not able to dance to music anymore on social media. And we always say that about the youngins, right? Even though I'm not too old myself. Although I'm not shaking my booty to songs on social media. There's a huge deal with ADT and Google. Google invested $450 million acquiring about, let me see here, I have the percentage, 6.6% stake in ADT to be able to combine Google's Nest hardware and ADT's security expertise for their services. Berkshire Hathaway, in a continuing trend of Warren Buffett not making good decisions, as I told you guys last year would happen, Berkshire Hathaway spent $2.07 billion of Bank of America shares in mid-July. The regulators cleared his permission to be able to go ahead and invest more than 10% in the company. And he gets, after his huge 40-something% of all of his investments are in Apple, after that, Bank of America is his biggest holding of about 11.9% or $25.8 billion. I mean, he's not making very good decisions. I don't know if it's the old age or it's just there's so much money flying around he doesn't know where to put it. But a place like silver or the silver miners would definitely be a great investment right now. In international news, we had the huge bomb. I'm sure you guys saw it in Lebanon, supposedly, because I haven't found out 100%. There was an ignition of 2,750 tons of ammonium nitrate. And that caused they first tried to say it was the fireworks explosion. So you guys remember that? And then the pictures of the aftermath came and the whole bottom section of that warehouse was in the sea. Hopefully, if any of you guys are watching from Lebanon, hopefully you guys are doing better. It cost $5 billion in collateral damage. So my hearts and prayers go out to you guys as well. In U.S. Friday, they imposed sanctions on the Hong Kong chief executive Carrie Lam for limiting the political freedoms of the previously run by British Island and now the special, I guess we can call it a special area of China because it's changed. And in unusual facts this week, Spaniards are demanding to know the whereabouts of King Juan Carlos of Spain. One of the things I find very funny, have you guys ever thought about how these people become kings? Is it just a warlord that all of a sudden gains control of an area and then he just, because of habit and over the years, they're just a family that becomes royalty? Have you ever thought about that? Another thing that's really interesting that you guys should look into is a lot of the royalty is actually German lineage. For example, the British royals changed their name to make it sound more British instead of German. Interesting. You guys should look that up. He abruptly left the country on Monday amid a cloud scandal of a financial deal with Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia, too, has too much money that it knows what to do with. He abdicated the throne in 2014 in favor of his son Felipe, and he is now found staying at Abu Dhabi's exclusive Emirates Place Hotel. If you guys don't know what that is, it's in the United Arab Emirates, in the Middle East, obviously. very near to Iran, in a country called United Arab Emirates. I just mentioned that. It's near Dubai, if you guys have heard the name of Dubai, the city. Windsor Castle, which is one of the residences of the Britain's Queen Elizabeth, is going to open the Terrace Gardens, the East Terrace Gardens, for the first time in 40 years. You'll be able to go and check that out and admire the amazing royal gardens. Despite over 20 cooling practices, 20 cooling policies, I should say, South Korean's capital, in Seoul, they've tried to limit the booming real estate market. Even though they're trying to put in over 20 policies around that, they've risen the property over 50% since 2017 at the fastest pace in the world, putting home ownership out of reach for most of the middle class. Opportunity there if you guys are looking for real estate. I was thinking about doing a video about the best markets in the world for real estate, especially the US, since I'm looking now, and I found some great information if you guys want me to share that as well. US Fed officials say an incomplete and most sophisticated tunnel in the US history was found on the border, stretching from San Luis, Arizona to the Mexican neighborhood across the border, was likely built for smuggling, had a ventilation system, water lines, electrical wiring, a rail system, and extensive reinforcement. And Mark Zuckerberg, age 36, CEO of Facebook, which still owns 13% of the company, became part of an exclusive club called the Centibillionaire, which is worth at least $100 billion. He crossed the milestone after the shares of his company, Facebook, surged. Only two other men, Amazon Jeff Bezos and Microsoft Bill Gates, have larger personal fortunes. And in a milestone in tech development, scientists have reclassified a discovery of a drilled mammoth bone that was used to be able to manufacture twine for ropes. It was found in a cave several years ago in southwest Germany and is estimated to be 40,000 years old, which means that maybe we didn't come from Africa after all. That's the news for this week, guys. Let me know if you guys have any questions. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to like the video if you like this, since I do it for free for you. And we'll see you next week.